Kang Doyun woke up the same way he always did. His eyes opened fast, his heart beating hard, and his hands reaching for something that was not there. The dream was fading already, but he could still hear the screaming. He could still feel small fingers holding his shirt. He sat up in his narrow bed and rubbed his face with both hands. The room was dark and cold. Outside the tiny window, he could see the lights of Orion's 7 trade station blinking in the blackness of space. Another day. Another load of cargo to move from one place to another. Doyun was 34 years old now. His hair was starting to show some gray, and there were lines around his eyes that had not been there 5 years ago. He was not old, but he felt old. He felt tired in a way that sleep could never fix. He got dressed in his worn work clothes and walked through the narrow hallways of the station. People moved around him, busy with their own lives. Humans mostly, but also traders from other species. A few aliens with blue skin walked past him. Some with 4 arms carried boxes. Do-hyun did not look at any of them for too long. The cargo bay was loud and bright. Machines beeped and hummed. Workers shouted orders at each other. Do-hyun found his ship in the corner, a small transport vessel that had seen better days. The paint was chipped, and one of the lights on the side kept flickering. But it flew well enough, and that was all he needed. Yoon Sora was already there, checking the engine readings on her tablet. She was younger than him by about 8 years, with short black hair and quick eyes that noticed everything. She had been his co-pilot for 3 years now, and she was the closest thing he had to a friend. "You look terrible," she said without looking up. "Good morning to you too," Do-hyun replied. "Bad dreams again?" He did not answer. He never answered that question. Instead, he walked past her and started checking the cargo straps. They had a delivery to make to Station 12, and he wanted to leave as soon as possible. Sora watched him for a moment. She had learned not to push him. In 3 years, she had learned many things about Kang Do-hyun. She knew he did not talk about his past. She knew he had been in the military once, during the war with the Sarani. She knew that sometimes late at night she could hear him talking in his sleep, but she did not know what haunted him. He kept that locked away somewhere deep inside. They were about to start the engines when the station alarms began to scream. Red lights flashed everywhere. The sound was so loud that Do-hyun had to cover his ears. All around the cargo bay, people stopped what they were doing and looked up in confusion and fear. "What is happening?" Sora shouted over the noise. Do-hyun ran to the nearest control panel and pulled up the station's external cameras. What he saw made his blood turn to ice. Ships, dozens of ships. They filled the space around the station like a swarm of silver insects. But these were not ordinary ships. They were warships, massive and beautiful and terrifying. Their hulls were smooth and curved, catching the light of distant stars. On every ship there was the same symbol, a circle with 3 lines through it, the symbol of the Sarani Empire. "No," Do-hyun whispered. "No, no, no." Sora came up behind him and looked at the screen. Her face went pale. "Are we under attack? Is it war again?" People around them were panicking now. Some were running. Some were crying. Mothers grabbed their children. Old veterans like Do-hyun stood frozen, remembering horrors they had tried so hard to forget. But nothing happened. No weapons fired. No explosions shook the station. The Sarani fleet just hung there in space, silent and waiting. Then a voice came through every speaker on the station. Every screen, every communicator, every device that could carry sound. The voice was female, clear and cold, speaking perfect human language. "I am Empress Vela of the Sarani Empire. I come not for war. I come for one person. Bring me the human called Kang Do-hyun. Bring him to me, and no harm will come to anyone." The cargo bay went silent. Everyone looked around, confused. Who was Kang Do-hyun? Why would the empress of an entire alien empire come looking for him? Sora turned slowly to look at Do-hyun. His face was white. His hands were shaking. She had never seen him look so afraid. "Do-hyun," she said quietly, "what is going on? How does the Sarani Empress know your name?" He could not speak. His mouth opened, but no words came out. His mind was spinning, falling backward through time. 15 years. It had been 15 years. He had tried so hard to forget. He had told himself that she must have forgotten too, or that she had died, or that it had all been some strange dream. But it was not a dream, it was real. And now she was here, with enough firepower to destroy the entire station, asking for him by name. Station security found him within minutes. 4 guards in heavy armor surrounded him and pointed their weapons at his chest. "Kang Do-yun?" the lead guard asked. "Yes," he managed to say. "You need to come with us. Now." Sora stepped forward. "Wait, you cannot just take him. He has rights. What is this about?" The guard looked at her with tired eyes. "There are 63 Sarani warships outside this station. The Empress herself is waiting. Whatever this is about, it is bigger than any of us. He is coming with us whether he wants to or not." Do-yun put a hand on Sora's shoulder. "It is okay," he said. His voice was steadier now, though his heart was still pounding. "I will go." "Do-yun, what is happening? How do you know the Sarani Empress?" He looked at her, and for a moment she saw something in his eyes. Pain, old, deep pain that had been buried for a very long time. "I knew her before she was Empress," he said quietly. "I knew her when she was just a scared little girl." Before Sora could ask anything more, the guards led him away. She stood alone in the cargo bay, watching him disappear through the doors. Around her, people were whispering, pointing, wondering who this ordinary cargo hauler really was. Do-yun walked through the station corridors like a man walking to his own execution. His mind kept going back to that night, 15 years ago. The fire, the blood, the small silver hand holding onto his shirt, and the screaming. The terrible, heartbreaking screaming of a child being torn away from the only person who had ever shown her kindness. He had spent 15 years trying to forget that sound. Now he was about to face the girl who made it. Only she was not a girl anymore. She was an empress, a conqueror, a ruler of 12 star systems, and she had come looking for him. The guard stopped in front of a large door. Beyond it, he could hear nothing. The silence was somehow worse than any noise could have been. "The Empress is waiting inside," the guard said. "Go." Do-yun took a deep breath. His hands were still shaking, but he had faced death before. He had walked through fire before. He could do this. He pushed open the door and stepped inside. 15 years ago, Kang Do-yun was a different man. He was 19 years old, thin and scared, wearing a uniform that was too big for him. He had joined the Earth Coalition military because he needed money for his family. He never expected to end up in a war. The conflict with the Sarani had been going on for 2 years by then. Nobody really remembered how it started. Some argument about territory, some insult that could not be taken back. Now humans and Sarani were killing each other across a dozen worlds, and young men like Do-hyun were caught in the middle. He was a rescue pilot. His job was to fly into dangerous places and bring people out. Colonists, wounded soldiers, anyone who needed saving. It was not a fighting job, but it was just as deadly. Rescue pilots did not last long. On the day that changed everything, Do-hyun was sent to evacuate a human colony on a border world. The Sarani had attacked, and the colony was burning. He flew through black smoke and falling debris, trying to find survivors. His radio was full of screaming voices asking for help. Then something hit his ship. An explosion threw him sideways. Alarms screamed. Controls stopped working. He was going down. The crash was violent. Metal twisted and broke. Fire erupted from the engines. Do-yun pulled himself out of the wreckage with bleeding hands and a broken rib. His ship was destroyed. His radio was dead. He was alone on an alien world, behind enemy lines. He walked for hours. The land around him was burning. Bodies lay everywhere, human and Sarani both. The air smelled like smoke and death. Do-hyun had never seen anything so terrible in his young life. As the sun began to set, he found a temple. It was a Sarani building, beautiful once, with tall white walls and golden symbols. Now half of it was destroyed. Fire had eaten through the roof, and the walls were stained black with ash. He went inside looking for shelter. What he found instead was a child. She was small, maybe 7 or 8 years old in human terms. Her skin was silver, like all Sarani, and her hair was white as snow. She was lying on the ground covered in blood and dust. Her eyes were closed. At first, Do-hyun thought she was dead. Then she moved, just a little, a tiny breath that made her chest rise and fall. Do-hyun knew what he should do. His training was clear. Do not engage with enemy civilians. Do not leave evidence of your presence. Complete the mission and return to base. But this was not a soldier. This was a child. A small, broken child who was dying alone in the ruins of her home. He knelt beside her. Her injuries were bad. Deep cuts on her arms and legs. Burns on her back. Something heavy had fallen on her. She needed medical care soon, or she would die. Do-hyun looked at her silver face. Her eyes opened slowly, and he saw that they were violet, deep and dark like a sunset. She looked at him with pure terror. He was the enemy. He was a human. In her short life, she had probably been taught that humans were monsters. "It is okay," he said softly. "I am not going to hurt you." She did not understand his words, but something in his voice made her stop trying to crawl away. She was too weak to run anyway. Do-hyun cleaned her wounds with water from his canteen. He tore strips from his own shirt to make bandages. He gave her food from his emergency pack, even though he knew he might need it later. The child ate slowly, watching him the whole time with those strange violet eyes. "What is your name?" he asked, not expecting an answer. But she understood that question. It must have been similar in her language. "Vela," she whispered. "Vela," he repeated. "I am Do-hyun. I am going to help you." He could not leave her there. He knew it was foolish. He knew it might get him killed. But he picked her up carefully and started walking. He would find a safe place for her. He would find her people. He would not let her die alone. For 3 days they traveled together. Do-hyun carried Vela on his back when she was too tired to walk. He found food where he could, wild plants and small animals. He shared everything with her, even when his own stomach was empty. At night they hid in caves and ruined buildings, and he kept watch while she slept. Slowly they began to understand each other, not with words but with actions. When Vela was scared, Do-hyun would hum old songs his mother used to sing. When she was in pain, he would hold her hand and tell her stories about Earth, about blue skies and green trees and oceans that went on forever. She did not understand the words, but she understood the kindness. On the third night, she spoke to him in broken human words. She must have learned them from somewhere, maybe from prisoners or recordings. "Why?" she asked. "Why you help me?" Do-hyun thought about it for a long moment. Why was he risking his life for an enemy child? Why was he sharing his food, treating her wounds, carrying her through this hell? "Because you needed help," he said finally. "That is reason enough." Vela looked at him like he was the strangest creature she had ever seen. Then slowly, she leaned against his shoulder and closed her eyes. It was the first time she had trusted him completely. On the 4th day, they were found. Surani soldiers surrounded them, dozens of them with weapons pointed at Do-hyun's head. He knew this was the end. They would kill him. They would probably kill Vela too, for being helped by a human. But then an older Surani stepped forward, a female with silver hair and kind eyes. She looked at Vela, and her face filled with shock and relief. "The child," she said in human language. "You saved the child." "She was dying," Do-hyun said. "I could not leave her." The older Surani, whose name was Mira, studied him for a long moment. Then she gave an order to the soldiers. They lowered their weapons. "You will be taken prisoner," Mira told him, "but I will make sure you are treated well. What you did, no Surani would have expected from a human." Soldiers moved forward to grab him. Vela suddenly realized what was happening. She screamed and tried to hold on to Do-hyun's arm. "No! No! Do not take him! He saved me! He is my friend!" Do-hyun knelt down and looked into her violet eyes. His heart was breaking, but he tried to smile. "You have to go with them now," he said. "They will take care of you. You will be safe." "But what about you?" Tears were running down her silver face. "Will I see you again?" He wanted to lie. He wanted to promise that they would meet again, that everything would be okay. But he could not lie to her. "I do not know," he said honestly, "but I will never forget you, Vela. Be strong. Be brave." The soldiers pulled him away. Vela's screaming followed him, filling the air like a knife cutting through his soul. "Do not leave me. Please, you promised you would stay. Do not leave me." Those words haunted him for 15 years. Every night, in his dreams, he heard them again. Every morning, he woke up with his hands reaching for a child who was not there. He was exchanged in a prisoner trade 3 weeks later. He went home. The war ended. Life continued. But he never forgot the girl with silver skin and violet eyes. He never forgot the promise he could not keep. And now, 15 years later, she had found him. The Grand Hall of Orion's 7 Station was the largest room Do-hyun had ever seen. High ceilings rose above him like the inside of a cathedral. Tall windows looked out into space, showing the terrifying sight of the Sarani fleet hanging in the darkness. Hundreds of people filled the hall, station officials in their formal uniforms, human military officers who had arrived on emergency transport, reporters with cameras trying to capture every moment, and Sarani guards, tall and silver-skinned, standing in perfect rows along the walls. At the far end of the hall was a throne. It had not been there before. The Sarani had brought it with them, a seat of power carved from some dark material that seemed to absorb the light. And on that throne sat the Empress. Do-hyun could not see her face clearly from where he stood. The distance was too great, and his eyes were blurry with exhaustion and fear. But he could see her shape, tall and elegant, dressed in robes that flowed like water. A crown of silver rested on her head. The guards pushed him forward. His legs felt weak. His heart was pounding so hard he thought everyone must be able to hear it. Step by step, he walked down the long path toward the throne. With every eye in the room watching him, whispers surrounded him like waves. Who is he? Just a cargo hauler, they say. Why would the Empress want him? Maybe he is a criminal. Maybe he did something terrible. Do-hyun heard none of them. His mind was full of memories. The fire, the child, the screaming, 15 years of nightmares coming together in this single moment. He stopped at the bottom of the steps that led to the throne. Protocol said he should bow, he should kneel, he should show respect to the ruler of an empire, but he could not move. He could only stand there, looking up at the woman who had once been a small, frightened girl in his arms. The Empress rose from her throne. The room went silent, so quiet that Do-hyun could hear his own breathing. She descended the steps slowly, her robes trailing behind her like a river of silk. Now he could see her face, and his breath caught in his throat. She was beautiful in a way that was almost painful to look at. Her silver skin glowed softly in the light. Her white hair fell past her shoulders like fresh snow. Her features were sharp and elegant, carved by nature into something close to perfection. But it was her eyes that broke him. Those violet eyes, deep and dark. The same eyes that had looked up at him with terror 15 years ago. The same eyes that had filled with tears when soldiers dragged him away. She stopped directly in front of him. They were the same height now. She was no longer a child he could carry on his back. She was a queen, a conqueror, the ruler of 12 star systems. But when she looked at him, all of that power seemed to fall away. Her cold expression cracked, her perfect composure shattered. And beneath the crown and the robes and the authority, Do-hyun saw something else. He saw Vela, just Vela, the girl he had saved. 15 years, she said. Her voice was barely a whisper, but in the silence of the hall, everyone heard it. I searched for 15 years. Do-hyun opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. What could he possibly say? What words could bridge a gap of 15 years of war and pain and loss? The Empress took another step closer. Her eyes were glistening now, filling with tears that she was fighting hard to control. I looked everywhere, she continued. Her voice was shaking. I sent agents to every human world. I searched military records, prisoner lists, death records. I spent fortunes. I made deals with criminals. I did everything possible to find you. The crowd was utterly still. No one had ever seen an empress like this. No one had ever seen the cold ruler of the Sarani Empire speak with such raw emotion. And when I finally found you, Vela said, do you know what I discovered? That you were alive. You were alive this whole time, living on some tiny station, hauling cargo, like nothing had ever happened. A single tear rolled down her silver cheek. She did not wipe it away. Why? Her voice broke on that word. All her power, all her authority, meant nothing now. She was just a woman asking a question that had tortured her for half her life. Why did you abandon me, human? The question hit Do-hyun like a physical blow. He felt something inside him crack open, some wall he had built around his heart 15 years ago. I did not abandon you, he said. His voice was rough, barely working. I never abandoned you. I tried to find you. When I got home, when the war ended, I tried. But I was nobody. A low-ranking pilot with no money and no connections. Your government sealed all records. I could not find any trace of you. He took a breath, fighting to control himself. I thought you had forgotten me, or that you had died. I told myself that you had a better life now, that you did not need me. I told myself that so I could keep going, because the alternative was too painful to accept. Vela stared at him. More tears were falling now, leaving trails of silver on her cheeks. Forget you, she said. How could I forget you? You were the only person who ever helped me. The only person who ever cared whether I lived or died. She reached out and touched his face. Her fingers were cool against his skin. Around them, the crowd gasped at this display of emotion, this impossible intimacy between an empress and a common human. After you were taken, Vela said softly, I was found by Mira. She discovered that I was the last heir to the royal bloodline. My entire family had been killed in the war. I was the only one left. Her hand dropped from his face, but she did not step back. I was raised in hiding, trained, prepared. When I was old enough, I took back the throne. I fought civil wars. I survived assassination attempts. I conquered everyone who stood against me. Her voice hardened for a moment, showing the steel that had made her an empress. I became the most powerful person in the Serani Empire. Then her expression softened again, and she looked at him with those violet eyes full of pain. And through all of it, I never stopped looking for you, because you were the first person to show me that kindness existed, that someone could help a stranger for no reason except that it was the right thing to do. She reached out and took his hand. Her grip was tight, desperate, like she was afraid he might disappear again. I am not here to hurt you, Do-hyun. I am not here for revenge or politics or power. I am here because I finally found you, and I am never letting you go again. The grand hall erupted in chaos. Officials shouted. Reporters screamed questions. Guards rushed forward, unsure what to do. But Do-hyun barely noticed any of it. He was looking at Vela, at the woman who had once been a child in his arms. And for the first time in 15 years, he felt the wall around his heart begin to crumble. I am sorry, he said. The words were not enough. They could never be enough. But they were all he had. I am so sorry I left you. Vela shook her head. Do not apologize. You did what you had to do. But now we are here, together. And this time, I am not letting anyone take you away. She turned to address the crowd, her voice suddenly strong and commanding again. She was the empress once more, powerful and untouchable. This man saved my life when I was a child. He showed me kindness when no one else would. He is under my protection now. Anyone who threatens him threatens me. She looked at Do-hyun one more time, and beneath the mask of power, he saw a smile. Small and fragile, but real. Come, she said. We have 15 years to catch up on. And she led him away, leaving a room full of stunned humans and Serani behind. The Empress's flagship was unlike anything Do-hyun had ever seen. The corridors were wide and bright, made of smooth white material that seemed to glow from within. The air smelled clean and fresh, like flowers after rain. Everything was beautiful, elegant, designed for a ruler who commanded the stars. Serani guards walked beside him, but they kept their distance. They had been ordered not to touch him, not to speak to him. He was a guest of the Empress, and that made him untouchable. Vela led him to her private chambers. The doors opened into a vast room with tall windows that looked out into space. There were seats made of soft material, tables covered with papers and data screens, and walls decorated with art that Do-hyun did not understand. Leave us, Vela said to the guards. No one enters until I say otherwise. The guards bowed and withdrew. The doors closed behind them with a soft sound. And for the first time since that night 15 years ago, Do-hyun and Vela were truly alone. The mask fell away. The Empress disappeared. Vela walked to a window and stood there with her back to him, her shoulders tight with tension. They will talk about this for years, she said quietly. The Empress who cried in front of hundreds of people, the ruler who showed weakness. Is that what it is to you? Do-hyun asked. Weakness? She turned to face him. Without the crown and the throne, she looked younger somehow, more vulnerable. I do not know, she admitted. I have spent so long being strong, so long hiding everything I feel. The Serani do not value emotion the way humans do. To them, feeling is failure. A ruler must be cold, logical, perfect. She walked to a seat and sat down heavily, like she was suddenly very tired. But I could never be that way completely. Because of you. Because I remembered what it felt like to be held by someone who cared. To be fed by someone who was starving themselves. To be protected by someone who had no reason to protect me. Doyun sat down across from her. Between them was a small table with a pot of something warm, some kind of Serani drink. He did not touch it. Tell me, he said. Tell me everything that happened after I left. Vela looked at her hands. Her fingers were long and elegant, but he noticed small scars on them. Battle scars. Signs of a life that had not been easy. Mira saved me, she began. She was a noble who had served my family for generations. When she realized who I was, she hid me from everyone. The war was still going on, and there were people who would have killed me just for existing. I was the last heir, a threat to anyone who wanted power. She picked up a cup of the warm drink and held it without drinking. I grew up in secret. Mira taught me everything. How to fight, how to speak, how to think like a ruler. She told me that one day I would take back the throne, and I needed to be ready. That must have been lonely, Do-hyun said softly. Vela laughed, but there was no happiness in it. Lonely does not even begin to describe it. I had no friends, no family. Everyone around me was either a teacher or a guard. The only memory I had of kindness, of real connection, was you. She finally took a sip of her drink. When I was old enough, Mira revealed me to the Empire. There was chaos, civil war. Half the nobles wanted me dead. The other half wanted to use me for their own power. I had to fight for everything. How did you survive? By being better than everyone who wanted to destroy me. Her violet eyes hardened. I learned to be ruthless, to make hard choices. I executed traitors. I crushed rebellions. I conquered systems that refused to accept my rule. She set down the cup and looked at him directly. I became the thing I needed to become to survive. But through all of it, I held on to one hope, one dream that kept me going when everything seemed impossible. Finding me, Do-hyun said. Finding you, she confirmed. I told myself that if I just became powerful enough, I could find you. I could bring you to me. I could finally thank you for what you did. And maybe I could have one real thing in my life. One connection that was not about power or politics or survival. Do-hyun felt a weight in his chest. Guilt, shame. All those years, she had been fighting and suffering and searching, while he had been running away from his memories. I should have tried harder, he said. I should have found a way. How? Vela asked. You were a low-ranking soldier in an enemy army. Your government did not care about you. Mine did not even know you existed. There was no path that led from where you were to where I was. I gave up, Do-hyun admitted. The words hurt to say. I told myself there was nothing I could do, and I moved on. I buried the memories. I pretended that it was all just a bad dream. And I never gave up, Vela said. There was no accusation in her voice, just fact. That is the difference between us. You had a choice. You could forget, move on, build a new life. I could not, because you were the only good thing I had ever experienced, and I refused to let that go. Silence fell between them. Outside the windows, stars drifted past like slow-moving lights. I am not angry at you, Vela said finally. I was, for a while. When I first found out where you were, what you were doing, I was furious. I wanted to hate you. I wanted to punish you for abandoning me. She stood up and walked to the window. But then I realized something. You did not abandon me. You were taken from me. And after that, you did what humans do. You survived. You kept going. You found a way to live with the pain. She turned to face him. That is what makes humans so remarkable. You break and you heal. You lose and you keep trying. Your kind has no special powers, no long lives, no great strength. But you have something my people lack. You have hearts that refuse to give up. Do-yun stood up and walked toward her. He stopped a few feet away, unsure if he should go closer. And yet I did give up, he said. I stopped looking for you. You stopped looking for someone you thought was lost forever. That is not giving up. That is accepting reality. She reached out and took his hand again. But now reality has changed. I am here. I found you. And I am asking you something I have wanted to ask for 15 years. What is it? Vela's eyes were bright with tears she refused to let fall. Stay with me. Not as a subject or a servant. Stay with me as my friend, as the person who saved my life, as the one connection to kindness that I have ever known. Do-yun looked at her. This powerful empress, this conqueror of worlds, was asking him for friendship. She was asking him to be the family she never had. I am just a cargo hauler, he said. I have nothing to offer an empress. You have everything to offer me, Vela replied. You have your kindness, your honesty, your heart. That is worth more than any treasure in any system. She squeezed his hand. I have spent 15 years becoming powerful. Now I want to spend the rest of my life becoming happy. And I do not think I can do that without you. Do-yun felt the wall around his heart finally, completely crumble. For 15 years he had carried guilt like a stone. Now that stone was dissolving, replaced by something warmer, something like hope. I do not know how to be the friend of an empress, he said. Vela smiled, really smiled, for the first time since they reunited. Then we will figure it out together, she said. We have time. We have all the time in the universe. And for the first time in 15 years, Do-hyun believed that maybe, just maybe, things would be okay. News traveled fast across the galaxy. Within hours of Vela's public display of emotion, every human world and every Serani system knew what had happened. The Empress of the Serani Empire had cried over a human. She had called him her savior. She had taken his hand in front of hundreds of witnesses. The reactions were immediate and violent. On Earth, politicians shouted in the assembly halls. Military leaders demanded investigations. How could a former soldier have contact with the enemy during the war? How could he have saved an alien child and kept it secret? Some called Do-hyun a traitor. Others called him a spy. All of them wanted answers. Captain Bae Junho, Do-hyun's former commanding officer, sent an urgent message. He was an old man now, retired and tired, but he still had connections. And those connections were telling him dangerous things. Do-hyun, you need to be careful, Junho said through the secure channel. There are people who want you silenced, permanently. They think you know things, secrets from the war that could hurt them. They are afraid of what you might tell the Serani Empress. I do not know any secrets, Do-hyun replied. I was just a rescue pilot. That does not matter. Fear makes people stupid. And stupid people with power are the most dangerous kind. On the Serani side, things were even worse. The noble houses were in chaos. For centuries they had preached the superiority of their kind. Humans were primitive, emotional, weak. The idea that an empress could care about one, could show such feeling for an inferior species, was unacceptable. Mira, Vela's old guardian and now her most trusted advisor, came to her with dark news. There is talk of rebellion, Mira said. Her silver face was lined with worry. House Kell and House Vane have been meeting in secret. They believe you have been corrupted by the human. They want to remove you from the throne. Let them try, Vela said coldly. I crushed rebellions before. I will crush them again. This is different, my empress. They are not just attacking your rule. They are attacking your honor. They are saying that you are unfit to lead because you feel too much. That you are more human than Serani. Vela stood at her window, looking out at the stars. Her jaw was tight with anger. I do not care what they say about me. I am the empress. I have earned this throne with blood and sacrifice. No one will take it from me. Then perhaps you should distance yourself from the human, Mira suggested gently. Just for a while, just until things calm down. Vela turned to look at her old guardian. Her violet eyes were hard as stone. I conquered 12 systems, she said slowly. I destroyed every enemy who dared to stand against me. I did not become empress to ask permission for whom I may care about. I will not hide my connection to Do-hyun. I will not pretend he means nothing to me. If the noble houses have a problem with that, they can come and tell me themselves." Mira bowed her head. She knew better than to argue when Vela used that tone. On Orion's 7 station, Yun Sora was having her own troubles. After Dohyun left with the Empress, authorities had questioned her for hours. Who was Kang Dohyun really? What did she know about his past? Was she a spy too? She told them the truth. She knew nothing. Dohyun had never talked about the war. He had never mentioned any alien girl. He was just a quiet man who wanted to be left alone. They did not believe her, but without evidence, they had to let her go. Now she sat in the empty cargo bay, looking at the ship she and Do-Yun had flown together for 3 years. She did not know if she would ever see him again. She did not know if he was a hero or a traitor or something else entirely. But she knew one thing. When he talked about that little girl, when he explained why he had saved her, his eyes had been full of pain. Real pain. The kind that could not be faked. Whatever the politicians said, whatever the history books would write, Sora believed that Do-Hyun was a good man, and good men deserve protection. She started making calls. Old friends, former colleagues, anyone who might be able to help if things went bad. The assassination attempt came 3 days later. Do-Hyun was walking through the corridors of the flagship, still trying to understand this strange new world he had entered. Sarani servants bowed to him wherever he went. Guards gave him respectful nods. Everyone knew who he was and what he meant to the Empress. He was thinking about Vela, about their conversation, about what the future might hold. He was not paying attention to the shadows. The blade came out of nowhere. A figure in dark clothes rushed at him from a side corridor. The knife was aimed at his heart. There was no time to think, no time to react. Do-Hyun was going to die. But he did not die. His body moved on its own, responding to training he had not used in 15 years. He twisted sideways, and the blade missed his heart by inches. It cut across his shoulder instead, leaving a deep, burning wound. He fell back against the wall, blood already soaking through his shirt. The assassin raised the knife again. Then Vela was there. She had been walking toward him from the other direction, coming to invite him to dinner. She had seen the attack, and without thinking, without hesitation, the Empress of the Sarani Empire threw herself between the assassin and Do-Hyun. "You dare!" she screamed. Her voice was terrible, full of rage that made the air itself tremble. The assassin hesitated. That hesitation cost him everything. Vela moved like water, like fire, like something not quite human. One moment she was standing still. The next moment the assassin was on the ground, his arm broken, his knife clattering away across the floor. Guards came running. They grabbed the assassin and dragged him away. Medical teams rushed to Do-Hyun, pressing bandages against his wound. But Do-Hyun was not looking at any of them. He was looking at Vela. She was kneeling beside him, her hands covered in his blood. Her face was white with fear. "You protected me," he said. His voice was weak from blood loss. "I was supposed to protect you." "You already did," Vela replied. Her voice was shaking. 15 years ago. Now it is my turn." She took his hand and held it tight. "Stay awake," she commanded. "Do not you dare close your eyes. You found me after 15 years. I am not losing you after 3 days." Do-Hyun tried to laugh, but it came out as a cough. "I am not going anywhere," he said. "I promised, remember? I promised I would keep you safe." "You broke that promise once," Vela said, but she was almost smiling through her tears. "I am not planning to break it again." The medical team lifted him onto a stretcher and carried him away. Vela followed, refusing to let go of his hand even as they rushed through the corridors. Behind them, the captured assassin was being taken to the interrogation cells. He would talk. They would find out who sent him, and Vela would make sure they paid for it. No one hurt the people she loved. No one. The medical bay of the flagship was quiet and clean. White walls surrounded Do-Hyun's bed. Machines beeped softly, tracking his heartbeat and his breathing. The wound on his shoulder had been treated with Sarani medicine, which was far more advanced than anything humans had. He would heal completely in a few days. But Vela refused to leave his side. She sat in a chair next to his bed, watching him sleep. She had not eaten since the attack. She had barely moved. Her advisors came and went, bringing reports and asking for orders. But she dealt with them quickly and sent them away. Nothing was more important than being here, in this room, watching the rise and fall of his chest. When Do-hyun finally opened his eyes, she was still there. "You stayed," he said. His voice was rough, tired. "Of course I stayed." Vela leaned forward, relief flooding her face. "How do you feel?" "Like someone stabbed me." He tried to smile. "Oh wait, someone did? That is not funny." "It is a little funny." Vela shook her head, but she was almost smiling. "You are impossible." The door opened, and Yoon Sora walked in. She stopped when she saw the Empress, unsure if she should bow or run or both. But Vela waved her forward. "You are the co-pilot," Vela said. "Sora, he has told me about you." Sora approached slowly, her eyes moving between the Empress and Do-hyun. "Is he going to be okay?" "Yes. The wound was deep, but our doctors are skilled. He will recover fully." Sora let out a breath she did not know she had been holding. She looked at Do-hyun, at the bandages on his shoulder, at the Empress sitting vigil beside his bed. For a moment she did not know what to say. "I never knew," she finally said, "about the war, about the girl you saved. You never talked about it." "I tried not to think about it," Do-hyun replied. "It hurt too much." "You should have told me. I would have helped you look for her." Do-hyun smiled weakly. "I did not think there was any point. I thought she was gone forever." Sora looked at Vela. The Empress was watching their exchange with quiet attention, and Sora suddenly understood something. This was not just politics or history. This was real. The way Vela looked at Do-hyun, the way she had stayed by his side through the night, the way her hand kept reaching toward him and then pulling back. This was love. Maybe not romantic love, but something just as deep. Something that had survived 15 years of separation. "I will leave you two alone," Sora said. "I just wanted to make sure you were okay." "Thank you for coming," Vela said. "You are welcome here anytime." Sora nodded and left, still processing everything she had learned. When they were alone again, Vela moved her chair closer to the bed. "The assassin talked," she said. "He was sent by House Kell and House Vane. They wanted to kill you and frame human agents to start a new war. They thought that if they could make me hate humans again, I would go back to being the cold empress they wanted. What will happen to them? They will be arrested, tried, punished." Her voice was hard. "No one hurts you and lives freely." Do-hyun watched her face. She was fierce, powerful, every inch the empress who had conquered systems. But beneath that, he could see the little girl he had carried through fire. She was still there, still afraid of being abandoned, still desperate to protect the one person who had shown her kindness. "Vela," he said gently, "you cannot fight everyone who hurts me. You cannot kill every enemy. Watch me. That is not the answer. If you rule through fear and violence, you will become the thing your enemies say you are. A monster, a tyrant." Vela's jaw tightened. "I do not care what they call me." "Yes, you do." Do-hyun reached out and took her hand. "You care what I call you, and I will never call you a monster. So do not become one." For a long moment, Vela was silent. Then slowly, her shoulders relaxed. The tension drained from her face. "You are the only person who talks to me like that," she said. "Everyone else is too afraid. Someone has to tell you the truth." "Yes." She squeezed his hand. "I suppose someone does." The door opened again, and Mira entered. She looked at the two of them, at their joined hands, and her expression was complicated. Concern and curiosity, and something that might have been hope. "My Empress," Mira said, "the noble houses are demanding to know your response to the assassination attempt. They expect blood." "They will get justice," Vela replied. "Not blood? There is a difference," Mira bowed. "As you wish." She turned to leave, but then stopped and looked at Do-hyun. "May I ask you something, human?" Do-hyun nodded. 15 years ago, you saved a child who was your enemy. You shared your food while you starved. You carried her through danger when you could have left her to die. Why? Do-hyun thought about the question. It was the same question Vela had asked him years ago. The answer was still the same. "Because she needed help," he said simply. That was reason enough. Mira studied him for a long moment. Then she looked at Vela. My Empress, may I speak freely? Always. Mira took a breath. For most of your life, I have watched you struggle. I have seen you fight, suffer, and sacrifice. I have always wondered why you clung so desperately to the memory of this human. Now I understand. She gestured toward Doyun. Humans do not love cautiously. They do not calculate whether kindness is efficient. They simply care, recklessly, completely, without asking what they will receive in return. Vela nodded slowly. That is what makes them so terrifying and so remarkable. Mira bowed again. I will inform the noble houses that justice will be served, and I will also inform them that anyone who threatens your human will answer to the Empire itself. She left, closing the door behind her. Dohyun looked at Vela. Your human? You have a problem with that? I suppose not. Vela smiled, and for a moment she looked young, happy, free from the weight of empires and politics and ancient grudges. Get some rest, she said. You have a lot of healing to do. Are you going to stay? I am not going anywhere. She settled back in her chair. Not now, not ever. Dohyun closed his eyes. His shoulder still hurt, and his body was tired. But for the first time in 15 years, he did not feel alone. He had kept his promise after all. He had kept Vela safe, and now she was keeping him safe in return. That was what family did. That was what love was. Not the romantic kind, not the passionate kind that burned bright and fast, but something deeper, something that had grown slowly over 15 years of separation, watered by memory and hope, and stubborn refusal to let go. As sleep took him, Dohyun heard Vela humming softly. It was the same tune he had hummed to her all those years ago, when she was scared and alone and clinging to him in the dark. She had remembered. Of course she had remembered. She remembered everything. 6 months had passed since the assassination attempt. In that time, everything had changed. The conspiracy against Vela was destroyed completely. House Kell and House Vane were stripped of their titles. Their leaders were tried publicly, their crimes exposed for all to see. The evidence revealed something even worse than anyone expected. They had been working with human factions who also wanted war. Both sides had enemies who profited from conflict. The exposure of this joint conspiracy shocked both species. Humans and Serani had been manipulated, pushed toward hatred by people who benefited from their division. For the first time, ordinary citizens on both sides began to question the old narratives. Maybe the enemy was not as evil as they had been taught. Maybe there was another way. Vela seized this moment. She proposed something that had never been done before, a joint peace summit held on neutral ground. Representatives from every human government and every Serani noble house would come together to talk. Not to fight, not to threaten, just to talk. Many said it was impossible. Too much blood had been spilled. Too many years of hatred could not be erased. But Vela was determined, and she had Dohyun beside her. The summit was held on a space station in the empty zone between human and Serani territory. Hundreds of delegates gathered in a vast hall, sitting on opposite sides of a long table. The tension was so thick it was hard to breathe. Vela stood at the head of the table, dressed in her formal robes. She looked powerful and calm, every inch the empress who had conquered systems. But those who knew her could see the nervous energy beneath the surface. This was the biggest gamble of her life. Dohyun stood beside her. He was not wearing a uniform or any formal clothes. He was just himself, a former pilot and cargo hauler, standing next to the most powerful woman in the Serani Empire. Some delegates looked at him with confusion. Others looked at him with anger. A few looked at him with curiosity. Vela raised her hand, and the hall fell silent. 15 years ago, she began, I was a child dying alone in the ruins of my home. My family was dead. My people had abandoned me. I had no hope and no future. She paused, letting the words sink in. Then a human found me, an enemy soldier, young and scared and wounded himself. He had every reason to leave me to die. His orders told him to avoid contact. His training told him I was the enemy. Every logical thought should have made him walk away. She looked at Dohyun. But he did not walk away. He picked me up and carried me through fire. He shared his food while he starved. He protected me from his own people and from mine. He showed me kindness when no one else in the universe would. She turned back to the delegates. That one act of compassion changed my life. It changed who I became. Every time I wanted to give up, every time I wanted to surrender to hatred and despair, I remembered that human. I remembered that kindness was possible, even between enemies. A murmur ran through the hall. Serani nobles shifted uncomfortably. Human politicians exchanged glances. Vela continued, her voice growing stronger. We have been enemies for too long. We have taught our children to hate each other. We have built walls of fear and suspicion between our species. And for what? For territory? For pride? For the benefit of those who profit from war? She pointed toward the empty seats where the representatives of House Kell and House Vane should have been. The conspiracy we exposed showed us the truth. There are people on both sides who want us to keep fighting, who feed us lies so we will keep hating. They do not care about humans or Serani. They only care about power. She lowered her hand. I am tired of being their tool. I am tired of war. And I believe you are tired too. The hall was completely silent now. Every eye was on Vela. I am not asking you to forget the past, she said. I am not asking you to forgive everything that has been done. I am asking you to try, to take one step, to see each other not as monsters, but as people. She looked at Doyun again. This man taught me something about humans. Your kind does not love carefully. You do not calculate whether kindness is worth the cost. You simply care with your whole hearts, even when it makes no sense. That is what makes you terrifying. And that is what makes you wonderful. She spread her hands wide. I want peace, not because it is easy, but because it is right. I want our children to grow up without fear. I want our species to learn from each other instead of destroying each other. I want a future where a human can save a Serani child without being called a traitor. She stepped back from the table. This is my offer. This is my hope. What you do with it is up to you. She sat down. The hall erupted in whispers and arguments. Delegates talked among themselves, some angry, some thoughtful, some confused. Then a human delegate stood up. He was old, with white hair and tired eyes. His uniform showed he was a general, someone who had fought in the war. I was at the Battle of Karen Station, he said. His voice was rough. I lost 2 sons there. For years I hated the Serani more than anything in the universe. He looked at Vela. But I am tired too. I am tired of sending young people to die. I am tired of medals and funerals and empty chairs at dinner tables. If there is even a chance of peace, I want to take it. He sat down. Another delegate stood up, then another. Some spoke of hatred and betrayal. Others spoke of hope and exhaustion. The conversation went on for hours. It was not easy. It was not perfect, but it was a start. When the summit ended, there was no grand treaty, no final resolution. But there was something more important, an agreement to keep talking. A promise to meet again, a tiny spark of possibility. That night, Doyun and Vela stood together in the observation deck of her flagship. Through the vast windows, they could see the stars stretching out forever. Somewhere out there were human worlds and Serani worlds. Billions of people who were depending on them to find a better way. Do you think it will work? Dohyun asked. I do not know, Vela admitted. Old hatreds do not die easily. There will be setbacks. There will be people who want to destroy everything we are building. That sounds difficult. It will be. She turned to look at him. But I am not afraid. I have faced worse odds before, and this time I am not alone. Doyun smiled. No, you are not. They stood in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars drift past. You know, Doyun said quietly, when I carried you through that forest 15 years ago, I made you a promise that I would keep you safe. You broke that promise, Vela said, but she was smiling. I know, and I have felt guilty about it every day since. He turned to face her fully. But I am here now, and I am not planning to break it again. Vela reached out and took his hand. Her grip was strong, sure, the grip of a woman who had conquered empires and survived everything the universe could throw at her. You already kept your promise, she said. You kept me alive. You gave me something to hold on to when everything else was dark. You made me believe that kindness existed. She squeezed his hand. I became an empress because of you. I conquered systems because of you. I searched for 15 years because of you. And now I am standing here, trying to build peace between two species because of you. Her violet eyes were bright with emotion. You saved me, Do-hyun, not just that night in the fire. You saved me every day after, every time I remembered that one human had shown me love when no one else would. Do-hyun felt tears forming in his eyes. He had carried guilt for so long, blame for a broken promise. But now he understood something he had never seen before. He had not failed her. He had given her exactly what she needed. Hope. And she had turned that hope into something incredible. So what happens now? He asked. Vela smiled, and in that smile he saw the little girl he had carried through fire, all grown up into something magnificent. Now we go forward, she said. Together. Whatever comes, we face it together. She leaned against his shoulder, and they watched the stars together. The universe was vast and dangerous and full of unknowns. But for the first time in 15 years, neither of them felt afraid. They had each other, they had hope, and that was enough to build a future on. In the grand story of the universe, they were two small people, one human and one Sarani, standing together against the darkness. But sometimes the smallest lights burn the brightest. Sometimes one act of kindness can change the fate of worlds. That is the power of love. That is the power of hope. That is what humans do.